That'll work. Hey, friends. Good evening. My name's Stephen Neely. I'm your co-host for the virtual Dalcroze meetup. This is our 77th meetup in 4 years, and I'm here with actually three of my best friends ever, and a fifth. I'll first, though, just introduce our good friend Veronica Pileski. Veronica and I started this crazy meetup 4 years ago. And here we are. We're still cooking. So I just want to say hi to everybody. We have a small crowd. It's evening on the East Coast of the States when we're hosting this. And so we have, it's actually by East Coast standards is almost a little bit late, but we hosted at different times through the season with the hope that different times are better for different people. So tonight we ended up with a smaller crowd, but hi, Mari and Quanting and Don. It's so good to have everybody together. Um, I think when we have a bigger crowd, we go into breakout rooms and introduce ourselves, but with the smaller crowds, we maybe just do it here. So maybe our friends who watch this after the fact, if you don't know us, we say our name and where we're from and who do we teach. So I'm Stephen Neely, and I'm from Central Pennsylvania, and I live in Pittsburgh the last many, many years, and I mostly teach university students. And most of my students are music majors. But I've also been doing a lot more work the last couple of years looking for non-musicians to do Dalcroze inspired work with. So just in the last year, or the last week, I did teach a group of, I taught a non-music major choir. So that was a bunch of musicians. I also taught a group of master's level and PhD level designers out of the School of Design, which is fascinating. If we need stuff to talk about tonight, I'll gladly tell you about that. And I have a new gig booked in early December, so just about a month from now, with the business students. So the MBAs at our university, I'll be doing Eurythmics for business and Eurythmics for design, which is all crazy. So that's me. I hand it over to Dawn.
Ah, hi, everyone. Dawn Pratson. I teach. I'm a largely retired, but I am teaching in some dance studios in Philadelphia and here in Massachusetts. I live in two places now. I live both in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and Rockport, Massachusetts, which is like a retirement scenario. And I just started a class called Body Voice Drum. No, it's called Body Voice Rhythm. So it's a dance class in a dance studio with lots of rhythmic activities and singing and voice. So it's been really fun to do that. And I've been teaching in the summer for Jeremy at the Dalcroze School of Music and Movement. I'm teaching for Veronica in a month for some of her programs, and that'll be fun. So I'm enjoying life. I bought a bass flute. I play in the low flutes choir. You know, the low flute choir thing's happening. It's very popular. That's
All,
me.
all the cool kids got a bass flute. Jeez.
There's really great repertoire
Oh
in
yeah,
yeah, it's really nice, decent. Okay,
nice.
I nominate Quanting.
Hi, Quanting Cheng. I'm in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, teaching K through 5 public school. But I mean, bass flute sounds pretty cool. I just want to say in Florida, I try to join like the recorder choir.
Love it.
But I mean bass flute. I mean, I do have a bass. I can only play recorder. I can't play bass flute. But
I love the recorder.
yeah, cool. I will nominate Mari.
Hi everyone, my name is Mari Izumi. I'm based in LA. I've been teaching at the Common Scope Music, performing arts in Los Angeles for the past 25 years. And then I also teach piano, and it's been very helpful for me to teach piano so that I can explore the way to apply Dalcroze education for to develop each student's artistry and musicianship training directly. And I have many violinists or string players for them, because they want to gain like keen sense of pitch and as well as rhythmic vitality. So I work a lot of with violinists as well, and then also I teach classes with music educators, and young ones are 5, 6 year olds.
Very good. Did we get everybody? I don't.
Veronica.
Didn't say hi yet.
Hello, Mari. It's so nice to see you. I don't know if we've met before, but I know we've emailed and I've heard your name.
Yes,
So it's
I
nice
met
to
you.
connect.
I met you at Longy, I
At
think.
Longy? Okay.
For the
Sorry,
first time.
my memory is not great, but it's good to see you again. So I teach flute and piano lessons in the Boston area, and I also teach Dalcroze classes for ages 3.5 to 14-ish. And my private students are from age 5 all the way to adults in their 70s. And I wanted to tell Quanting that there is a bass recorder. You should check it out.
Contrabass recorder, right? There's a yeah. Where's Quanting? We lost her.
Yeah, maybe she just took her video off for a minute.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
Veronica, what's our agenda for the evening?
We were going to do some announcements, and then Elizabeth and Dawn were supposed to present. So I'm not sure if Elizabeth had something come up last minute. So I think we'll have a presentation from Dawn, and then we can have a discussion as we planned. And yeah, should be a good meetup. I think for announcements, we'll just say this for people here and also anyone who is going to watch the recording. We have a masterclass with Sachiko Muranaka from Japan coming up this weekend. So it's either October 19th or 20th, depending on where you live. And then we have Dalcroze Essentials with Andrew Davidson, and he just put out a lovely video that we'll advertise tomorrow that kind of talks about what he intends to do in that class. It's for people of all levels and background experience with Dalcroze, or maybe no experience. And I think he really just wants to meet everyone where they're coming at and help them to think more about how can my teaching draw from these principles, and how can I start from where I am. Yeah, I don't know. Stephen, do you want to say anything else about our upcoming events?
Just that both of those are world class. Sachiko, I don't assume most of our community, our VDM community, has met Sachiko. She's a master musician. She's a longtime Dalcrozian. I met her many years ago at Carnegie Mellon when she was there studying with Marta Sanchez, and she's continued to be one of the main teachers in Japan for many years. And so it's a real coup to get her to say yes. Her English is good, but she's going to tell you that she doesn't think her English is that good, and it really is, and she's going to be great. And so I'm really just so excited to feature her and to introduce her to the community. And then Andrew Davidson has been with us. He's done a master class for us before, and he's been a good friend of the VDM since we started. And so we were really happy to get him to take on a 3-session short course under the Dalcroze Essentials heading, where again, the Dalcroze Essentials is really our sort of new sub-series pointed at basics. So what are Dalcroze basics? What are Dalcroze essential attentions and essential thoughts? So assume to not be the fanciest, fringiest, extra things, but really what are the most down the middle sorts of attentions and ways of thinking about including Dalcroze work and whatever you do. And if you haven't met Andrew, he's in addition to just being really talented, he's one of the most lovely people. Just such a positive force in our community, and we're just really happy to have all kinds of excuses to work with him. So I hope everybody will find a way to get in on both of those things.
I wanted to share the agenda, but I'm having trouble, so I will work on that. But I think I'll just hand it off to Dawn. who's going to share for maybe 5 minutes, and then we can discuss, and I'm sure we'll hear more from Dawn as we have our discussion.
Yeah. There you go.
I'm going to share in the chat the document that I made quite a while ago. It's not even a PDF, it's just a Word document that if you want to look at it. But I'm going to, this is a workshop I've done a bunch of times. When I look back over it, I think it's pretty good. A plastic anime for children. I taught K to 8 for 10 years. Actually, it started out K to 5, then it was K to 6, then it was K to 7, then it was 8, because I was the first music teacher in this brand new charter school. We started and we built up, and so I probably did plastic anime in various ways, maybe a dozen times during that time. So the main purpose of doing a plastique is to deepen students' body-mind understanding of music. This can be accomplished by the teacher creating choreography that emphasizes certain musical subjects, or designing lessons that get students to create the movements. And you can also combine. The teacher creates the A section, the students the B section, or something like that. And my process in working with children includes the choosing of the music, which is really important. And in this note, I say, choose music that is either short enough or has excerpts that are easily isolated from the whole. The length of a plastique is best, in my opinion, between 1.5 and 3 minutes long, unless you have very small classes with many hours and pretty advanced students. And this goes for adults too, frankly. I mean, 3 minutes, depending on how much time you have. Choose music with clear and strong contrasts, clear form, clear structure. Repeated sections are great. The younger the students, the simpler the structure, and the more profound the contrasts. Select the salient musical subjects to address. Some examples: the form, A-B, A-B-A, theme and variations, etc. The beat, its subdivisions. The rhythmic elements, patterns, complementary rhythm. The metric elements. The phrase, line, and structure. The dynamics. Harmonic themes, major, minor, modal, tonal, atonal, depending on what age you're working with, melodic pathway, direction, texture, and orchestration. Those are some of the possible musical subjects to bring out in your plastique. Creating the plastique with the students' input. So here's a process that I've used with all ages, actually. Present the music to the students. Listen several times using a variety of active listening exercises. Give the students a score, some kind of visual structure, visual map, outlining sections, salient features. Sometimes I have them create the map with me once we listen to it a few times. Lead the students in a movement follow that you prepare, that I prepared. So I listen to the piece a lot. I pick some of the qualities that I want to emphasize with movement, and I just have the students follow me. I did that a bunch in my teaching. I enjoyed doing that. And it's another way of giving students sort of new movement repertoire and a way for them to listen actively. Have students draw or write their reactions, thoughts, feelings as they listen. Have students create a story. I've done that a lot with adults and children. Create a story for what's going on in the music. I've had students vote on what their favorite story was. I've had students, I've sort of mixed their stories together into creating one story out of everyone's input. Structure ways for them to tease out the subjects you are interested in exploring. Draw them a melodic contour. Show with your fingers where there are just one or a few voices and when there are many. Make smooth movements with your hands when you hear legato and sharp movements when you hear staccato. Those are some examples. And then share and discuss what they heard using your vocabulary that you're working with. And then design a structure for student group work. For example, teachers choreograph the piece with input from the students' active listening. Students work in small groups to choreograph a section. The teacher creates the chorus or theme that returns. Students create the variations. And then refine, rehearse, add costumes, props, lighting, etc. And some final thoughts. Creating original works with students is a messy and often chaotic experience. And that's kind of gets back to what we were talking about in terms of classroom management. The larger the class, the more teacher-led and structured the process needs to be. Each of us has to decide how much chaos we are willing to tolerate. I often find that if I can tolerate some of the unknown and chaotic aspects of creating something with my students, the results are usually worth it. So that part of me that feels pressure to control the students and get rid of the messiness, I have to fight against that and allow myself to tolerate some chaos. If the principal walks in at that time and thinks, oh, you have bad classroom management, you have to explain what's going on. I also have found that this process is often more successful when it results in an informal showing of the work to another class or a couple of classes. With my second graders, we've had the other second grade come and watch and then have the other class show their version of it. Rather than making it a part of a concert or recital. This keeps the process of learning about and through and with the music in the foreground, rather than shifting the focus to making something that looks good enough to show. I have found that large classes of young elementary students don't have the maturity to rehearse something over and over that needs to polish it for a performance, that just loses its interest after a while. They've done the work, they feel the music, they've learned the piece, but how many, so I've noticed that I kind of limit the amount of time that we rehearse and run something. But then again, maybe it's worth something to teach them about polish and practice. This is kind of food for discussion. And then finally, I have this plastic pieces list, which I can put that in the chat too. It's not, I feel like it needs work. It needs, I haven't added to it in a long time, but let's see, let me go back to the chat and put that in the chat. Was I able to put the other one in the chat?
No, you maybe have to hit return.
Oh, let me try. Okay, how do I do this? Suddenly I'm drawing a
On the
blank.
bottom of the chat window, there's a little the third icon looks like
File!
yeah.
Yay! Now I gotta find it. It's on my desktop, not the document, but here we go. Sorry. So this is a list of pieces that I have either done or want to do and think they would be good to do plastic with children. And just give me a moment and I will get there. I will get there. I will get there. Yes, you can get there. Okay, there it is. Pieces for plastic. And I'll put the other document in there too, the one that I was reading off of. Here I go. Process, plastic process. There it is, right? Process cannot be set. Oh, because it's open. Let me close it. Sorry. Close it. Now open it. Ah. Okay, there you have it. So pieces for plastic. So some of the ones that I've liked working with.
Don, will you email those to me? But before you do that, do you have more to share right now with that? Or that sounded like you were finishing. Great. Will you email those to me and I'll make sure that everybody can get them.
I should make a PDF out of them, right?
Doesn't matter. You can send
Okay.
it to me anyway and
Okay. All right. Thank you.
and I can move it on. Well, the idea of plastique with the little ones, or plastique at all, honestly, for a wider audience. I mean, for the tried and true Dalcrozians, there's all sorts of things to talk about, even with that group and the littles. And then for anybody who's not come through our practices, I think the idea is totally worth. There's all sorts of clarifications that a mixed group would benefit by us talking through. Cool. Veronica, are we into conversation or do we have?
Yeah, I haven't heard much from Elizabeth, so I think we should just have a conversation about what Don shared. And yeah, I'm wondering if anyone has reflections or thoughts to share or questions for Don.
You want to talk a little bit about working with what was the oldest groups, Don, that you were working with?
Children wise or
Yeah, well, yeah, children wise.
fifth graders, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so did you learn anything it sounded like you maybe started with just the youngest and then as the school grew, then you grew, you were able to bring them up into those older grades. Is that how that worked?
I mean, I think I randomly selected different classes to do plastic with. I mean, I remember the one fifth grade we did Peer Gynt, and there were some real rambunctious boys in that class. They were just, and boy, they made, they did the evil guys, they did and they did a great job of just being the evil characters and how, I remember really one boy who was driving me bananas. He just looked incredible on stage and in his body movement and with his character. It was really great. I thought I was seeing a transformation of a person in my class, but then after it was over, he kind of went back to his regular behavior, which was a little challenging. But anyway, yeah.
I think Mari, I saw your hand raised.
What?
Mari raised her hand, I think.
Oh yeah, Murray.
Yes, so yeah, it was very interesting. Like you mentioned, like like if the musical form is ABA, and then students may create A section, and then teacher can create B section, and then I've never done that way. So okay, or teacher can demonstrate some of the movement, or like so it was a lot of like inspiring tips. So thank you so much. So I was wondering, so your class is really like dedicated for this plastic anime study, or what is this? What do you teach? Like, is that like a Eurythmics class?
It was like a unit. It was like a unit I would do. Like in some cases it would just be a month-long unit. In some cases it might be a 2-month-long unit with some kind of performance at the end of that 2 months. I have done it as part of the spring concert thing, but more often I enjoyed a more informal showing at the end of a unit.
The title of the course was just general music. What was the title?
General music.
Yeah.
General music, yes.
And then do you spend like an entire session for the plastic, or of course you have
Yes.
like some warm up, the activities, and then you do like in pretty much entire.
Yeah, sort of the things that I outlined, some active listening, some writing, some drawing, and if it's going to be a choreographed piece with a performance, it usually lasts several weeks. I would say it would be a several week unit that I would do with the students. Um, and that, I don't know if you've ever done that movement follow where you take an excerpt of music and you yourself decide, what you want to show in it, and you practice and kind of rehearse what you want to show, and then you have the students just follow you. I really like doing that, and I really think it helped students build repertoire and develop their listening ear, their movement repertoire and their listening ear. Um,
Yeah, that nature of movement repertoire, I'm not sure is something everybody would know about or would think about. You can't, in any of the ages, really, to me anyway, any of the ages, you can't assume that students just know how to move, or that they're just gonna be willing to wiggle around. Maybe if they're proper dancers or they're coming out of a specific dance culture, then the options of what counts in a ballet class or in a jazz class have already been started to be set up. Like these are the ways we move in this class. And so that has maybe been covered. But in most of our settings, that is in most sort of Dalcroze, where the word Dalcroze would pop its head in, very few of the students I've ever worked with had any proper movement vocabulary. That is, just even know like what's an option, like what's acceptable. Like, do you want me to be standing up tall all the time? Do I just wiggle my fingers? Is this choreography, or am I to be rolling on the floor? Or am I supposed to be very violent in my gesture and hop up and down? And is it high energy aerobic work that we're doing, or is the options so much more drawn out? And until you find ways to lead the class through and slowly build the vocabulary, I always just assume they have none or wouldn't know what to do. Or if I threw them into the deep end right away, I'm always afraid that I'll lose the class. That is, that they'll revolt, or that they'll feel so uncomfortable that they wouldn't be willing to continue on. So that's always my bias. But even though I did study dance a fair bit when I was young, I was never good at it, and I just assume that most of the students that I have worked with over the years don't come with that kind of freedom in their body, and it's our job to lead it. So I love your idea of just do what I do. You don't have to think about it. Just do what I do. And then what will happen is by the time you're done doing what you do, they already have an implied, oh, that's the range. We're not going to do anything bigger than that or smaller than this. It counts if it hits kind of the average of what my teacher just showed me. Now I have a basic idea of if I were to make up something. Dawn, did the things I said sit with you? Or I mean, you're such a mover and a proper dancer. So do you just assume everybody dances?
no, I do assume that people need to expand their movement repertoire, but I also assume that children inherently love to move and love to dance and love to express themselves with their body, and that they have inherent natural movement. So natural movement is the Dalcrozian thing. I mean, that's
Right.
that's what Dalcroze used and emphasized. And he didn't like dance. I mean, he didn't not like dance, but he didn't do dance. He said he didn't do dance, and so he used natural movement. And I think children are full of natural movement. So my leading is one thing, but I also do a lot of activities that get them moving. And so, just taking turns leading a movement. And sometimes they discover things, especially if you mirror back to them. That's like a dance therapy thing. That's what we did in dance therapy training. We learned how to mirror and follow our patients, our students' movements, which would then give them this message. Oh, that's what I'm doing. Oh, that's me. Oh, well, I can do that kind of thing. So a lot of my leadership does pick up sometimes in other students' movements. And so I guess the only thing I would say is natural movement, not dance movement per se. That's what we're working with to a large degree. If students do have dance movements, I accept them, and it's great if they want to bring them. But I think for plastique, it's natural movement. And the second thing, I think children love to dance, and they should be moving. They should be creatively moving all throughout their childhood, hopefully, whether they're doing it on their own or whether they have a creative movement class. But they love it.
Don, do you think the age like, closer to fifth grade, they become more self-conscious and a little bit, not like a challenge. It's challenging for them to open up, or
Yes.
you know, and then it's kind of contagious, because one student's a little bit self-conscious, and then everybody sort of like hesitate to open up. That's
Yeah.
that's always challenging for me, around that age. Probably it's different if they grew up doing that way, but if they are
That
new,
helps. But even
right?
if they did grow up, I saw a lot of children who were like third grade, fourth grade, and fifth grade. I saw that transition, that transformation occurs. So one of the ways that I do it is I show my own silliness and I'm not afraid to be silly and I'm not and I let them know that that's okay to be and you know so that name and movement thing, you go around and say your name and do a movement, that it's a little hard with 28 kids. My school kept getting bigger. We're going to stay at 20. No, we're at 25. No, we're going to stay at 25. No, so we're going to stay at 28. Oh, okay. But that name and movement thing, that students really liked that. And I kept doing that throughout the grades. Not every session, but do a movement, say your name, and we all mirror it. So those little moments where you're inventing movement and sharing the movement, that would last through the older grades. And they change too. And sometimes I would talk about that. I said, remember when you were in third grade? This movement's a little different. Yeah.
And then of course you change like a selection of the music depending on the age, right?
Yeah.
Like for the fifth grade.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
I think like I was saying, the younger students, the more really crisp the form needs to be, and contrast, very strong contrast. So I want to go back to my list here.
Diagnosed perfectly why I was so stressed last spring trying to do plastique for a very like high stakes performance showcase, and like I didn't do as much of the preparatory steps as you described, and then I let them do the plastique and decide it, but I gave them too much freedom, and then I was panicking a week before trying to set the thing like I wish I had had your guide. So I will
Yeah,
definitely be using that in March.
I
I was just
know.
like I was like, oh, you're saying all the things that I could have done to not feel so stressed the week before, being like, what will these kids perform next week? So
Yeah, I've had some bombs too. I had one bomb with a group of six, maybe grade. It was at Beethoven. It was hard music. I don't even remember what piece it was, but it was, it was a bit of a bomb. They kind of froze, they kind of didn't express themselves very well. But
I
no,
feel
I've
like
had
I need
enough.
to just put a pause on this conversation because Elizabeth was able to join us. And so, Elizabeth, if you're willing, we'd love to hear your sharing about your Del Crozman and the Boys Choir School. And then we can maybe talk a little bit about yours and then how they both connect.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm so sorry I'm late. I'm gonna be really honest, I forgot that this was happening.
I
And
almost
so
forgot too, so I could have
I
like
almost
not been
forgot
here and
to.
Stephen would have been
today
texting
was
me.
today was a sort of a quasi vacation day, and it was on the calendar, but it wasn't
All
in the
good.
brain. So
Right.
I'm sorry that I missed part of or the beginning of Dawn's presentation, and I've worked with Dawn a bit, and I always learn so much from her, and so anyway, it's wonderful. Um, I'm Elizabeth, and I know Veronica probably more than most, but I know her the best out of anyone here, I think. This is coming out wrong. She and I have worked together for a long time. Sorry. For a while, and she sort of encouraged me to go down the path of Dalcro certification and was my cheerleader along the way. And so I finally finished my certification in April or May. And I've been using Dalcro's. I've worked at a boys' choir school for this is my 12th year, and I've been teaching their musicianship and theory classes for about 6 years, 6 or 7 years. And the school is for grades 3 through 8. So that's like age 9 until 13. And it's all boys, and it's a full-time, like regular academic school, but it also has a really big emphasis on music. It's a Catholic school, and they sing liturgy most days of the week, like Tuesday through Friday, and then also on Sundays every week. And they sing the repertoire that they learn to sing is they sing Mozart masses and things by Bach. They'll do like the Fauré Requiem in a couple of weeks. So they sing like a lot of repertoire that is really pretty challenging for a third grader or a fourth grader or a fifth grader to sing. And they can do it because they have about 2 hours. No, they have 2 rehearsals most days of the week for 45, 50 minutes, and then some piano lessons, some voice lessons, and then they get to see me for an hour or so, 2 hours or so a week for musicianship and theory. And what kind of started me down my path for becoming certified in Dalcroze was this question of how do we prepare, like what are the skills that young singers need to be able to learn to read and perform pretty high level works. And so they do a lot of, a lot of what they do is their sight singing becomes very good just by the nature of how much repertoire they need to learn. But I was, I'd always kind of been struck by, well, they can sing it, but they move through repertoire pretty quickly, so it doesn't always feel settled or like as polished as maybe it could be. Or if you listen to a recorded version of any of these things, that's obviously a high level of polish. And they're not the function of the school, the mission of the school is not to be singing recording level music every week. It's to function as a choir that assists in liturgy. And so it's there's a lot of different there's slightly different goals there. But I have been interested for a long time in what are the ways that can help them become more musical. How can they be learning music faster so that the notes, rhythms, and vocal techniques are easier to them, so they can focus and have more brain space for artistic things. And so I've worked at it from 2 different directions. I should also say the school uses a written theory exam system, also with their piano lessons. So they take graded music exams at least once a year for music theory, which is music theory and then also piano. And so I've sort of approached it from 2 different ways. For a while, there have been a couple of times throughout the past couple of years where the director has said, oh, they're working on this piece. Could you work with them in your class on it? And so like I did a whole unit or a couple of weeks work on Benjamin Britten's Missa Brevis, which like one of the movements, the Gloria movement, has a lot of mixed meter. And so there's a lot of things in 7/8, but sometimes it's 2 plus 3. Sorry, 2 plus 2 plus 3. Sometimes it's 3 plus 2 plus 2. Sorry, I'm not doing the math right. The groupings are different, sometimes changing within every measure could be different. And so that was a couple of years ago before I had gone too far in my Dalcroze training. And so I did try a lot of different activities with helping them become more comfortable with 7, 8. And, you know, developing some rhythm language that they could map onto their music and that they could write in their music and use for score study. You know, trying to feel all of those irregular patterns. And you know, not in a, it wasn't in a, like, let's start with moving our quarter notes really well, and then let's progress to, you know, compound time after we've done simple time for a long time. So it really wasn't, I wouldn't say that their movements were, you know, like a student who's been doing Dalcroze classes for 5 years and now they've arrived at this mixed meter. It was more the other direction, like, okay, we're learning this repertoire, we need some skills. And so I've done some of that, and then, but also more recently have been teaching the 3rd grade class. This is my 2nd year doing like a complete Dalcroze curriculum for 3rd grade before they start doing any written theory. And you know, I'm not in a sort of in a silo in that I'm the only music teacher that they're interacting with. You know, they have choir rehearsals where they're learning lots of repertoire, and I really see my role as kind of filling in the gaps and strengthening all of those skills that they need as singers. You know, singing in simple time, a lot of you know, quarter notes, half notes, 8th notes, 16th notes, and patterns within that. And then also some 6/8. They don't do a whole lot of 9/8 repertoire, or 12/8 necessarily, but kind of getting just those kind of big building blocks shored up so that they can sight read a little bit better and be ready to follow the conductor more when they're, you know, conducting in traditional conducting patterns, and being ready to hear or identify, oh, well, here's a triad on the score, and I've sung this and I've moved this, and I know where 1, 3, and 5 are, to, you know, kind of have those, yeah, like I said, building blocks that help get them over the initial hump in rehearsal. Yes.
Thank
So
you.
if there's time for
That's amazing.
questions.
Yeah.
Can you tell us just a little bit more about the school? So what do they do when they're, it sounds like a lot of music. So are they also learning to read and write and do the math and all the other stuff?
Yeah, it is. Yep, it's a full regular academic day school. They take all of the normal subjects, math, social studies, science, ELA, Latin, because they sing in Latin a lot, and also religion because it's a Catholic school, so they have some religious studies as well. It is a longer school day. Like they start at 7:30 and finish at 3:15.
Yeah,
So it's a little bit longer, and the classes, yeah, maybe
that's
a little
very
shorter.
cool. Very cool sounding.
What are the grades? What are the ages and the grades? You might have said that.
Sure. 3rd grade is the youngest, 8th grade is the oldest.
Hmm.
So, and so that, you know, as their voices change at a certain point, and then they kind of, they sing every week with a schola of adult singers, and so they rehearse with them like on Thursday nights and Sunday mornings. So they're singing the treble, and then when their voices change, they might learn the bass part or the tenor part or whatever.
And they're all boys?
Yeah. Yeah. So
Whenever
so
I feel
you know, a Dalcroze class of only boys is very high energy, and you know, different. This is the only place that I've done Dalcroze classes like regularly. I've done workshops or like week-long camps, and it is a different field when there's, you know, some girls in the room versus all boys, and just the level of energy and kind of the interest in kind of pushing the boundaries of safety and that sort of thing. So.
whenever I feel overwhelmed by my class of 10 boys, because it just worked out that at this community music school I had 10 boys and no girls in this one class. I just think of Elizabeth. I'm like, Elizabeth's been doing this for 12 years. I can figure this out.
I'm curious.
they
Sorry.
graduate.
Go ahead.
Hunting.
Oh, I'm just curious what happened after they graduated. Like when they go to high school, do they continue their like training or they just stop?
Oh, that's a great question. it's a very small minority who go on to become professional musicians. You know, that's not the main focus of the school. Um, uh, some of them, you know, I think parents often see it as um, they come to the school, they send their kids to the school for a number of reasons, but one of them is I think a lot of them want their kids to get into sort of more elite private schools for high school. And so like the choral aspect of it is um, you know, obviously really an important foundation in music, and then also in life, because we need a lot of these skills, or these skills transfer to other areas of life too. But I think it is, you know, it's sort of it's a well-rounded education that's a little different than maybe someone else's, and I guess that helps them get into different schools. So some of them continue their they'll go and sing in their high school choir. I've heard stories of them kind of leading rehearsal sometimes if needed, because they have, you know, a lot of great rehearsal skills. Some of them already have other musical interests, like some of them play the violin really well or cello or something. And so they'll, you know, continue those instruments. So yeah, it's not, we do like there's been maybe 2 or 3 boys in my time there, maybe three or four who I know who have gone on, who are studying music in college or pursuing it professionally. Often they're organists, a couple organists and a singer, I think. So it's
Yeah.
not the professional track is not the main goal,
Right.
but sometimes.
Yeah, I don't think that's the main goal in almost any public school, even performing arts high schools. We don't assume that most of them are, that that's the one thing that they've, you know, that they're dedicated to. So I think, but it sounds like a really exciting place. And for them to be able to do that much repertoire,
Is
is,
it is it a public school? Sorry. It's private school.
Yeah,
Yeah,
independent private. Yeah.
independent private school. Just checking. Yeah. I was going to say a public school that's all boys, so they study Latin and sing in a choir. That's a be very unusual public school. Yeah.
Definitely a very small niche. So,
How many students in the school approximately?
I think we have 46 total.
Wow.
40, yeah. So, some of the classes are very small, very small. I think they would like all of the levels to have it 12, I think. 12 kids in class, so that's kind of the max. So very, very high, you know, parent or not parent, teacher student ratio.
I'm really interested in this idea of working from the foundation to shore up what they need to know versus like, all right, we got to learn 7/8, and like, yeah, you haven't learned simple time versus compound time, and right, like what you said, like we just got to like give them some skills quickly within 2 weeks, even though it's a more advanced topic. And I'm just very curious as you do more of this, how well you find that those kinds of learning stick over the years with the students 3 years later versus also um I don't know, like I just noticed a lot of these foundational things, they show up in my students playing like 3 years later as like a core part of what they have as musicians. And so I'm just wondering if you've also noticed any like lingering effects of things you've done in either track that later on you're like, oh, they have the skill now that I remember teaching them a long time ago.
That's a great question. I mean, I think just like as a just like to pull an example from the 7/8, like I had done a lot of, you know, we didn't discover a rhythm language. We used triangles for three, you know, subdivisions of three, triangle, and a circle for two, circle, circle has 2 syllables. And so like now when they're practicing that particular piece or they're in 7/8, the school as a whole tends to use those as like the rhythm backbone. That's not a whole physical body thing that everyone has learned. I think all the kids who I did any of those activities with are away now, and I haven't like come back to that necessarily. But it is a great question, like what But I think that's also a question for anyone who teaches private lessons on an instrument, any instrument. You know, it's instrument study is very repertoire driven because it's very performance driven. Like, what are you going to play for everybody? Um, and I think, you know, in the most ideal world, yes, you build up slowly, and you know the things, whether or not you're doing Dalcroze and your private lesson, you know, ideally you're learning these you're doing simple time, you're doing compound time, you do the patterns, and it kind of spirals up. But I think when you're in an ensemble, and especially, yeah, if you're in an ensemble, then there's always going to be multiple levels of people in one place. Even if it's an auditioned group, there's always going to be differences in skill levels. And so there's always going to be someone for whom they haven't had that really gradual trajectory up, and they're sort of like just grasping at the things that they need to get through that. And I think I don't know, I think there's learning in that as well. You know, what are the essentials that I need to be able to do this? And you know, maybe that's not perfectionistic, but I think it, you know, definitely, I feel like sometimes I could use that a little bit more in my life, in my work. Just what do I need to hold on to?
It's realistic, maybe more realistic, not perfectionist. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a question, like a more basic question. I have all boys, you know, Douglas class, like 10, 11-year-olds, and only one student has, you know, his voice is changing and very deep, you know, only one student has deep voice, and I'm inviting him to sing octave lower, but it's I don't know how to develop or how to help him have more like a singing range. Like it seems to be his singing range is very limited. It's not definitely not an octave. It's very like, you know, like fifth or sixth, or, and then, you know, I try to sing one octave lower with him, but still, you know, others are singing higher, and I don't know if you have any suggestions or how to. And then it's all boys, but you know, like others are like kind of looking, oh, he has other, you know, or his voice is different or something like that. So I don't know how I could help him.
I think Stephen has something to say. Maybe you could speak to that.
I can actually but I didn't want to get in the way if you had an answer. The first rule of changing voices is do no harm. And so when we encounter, you know, the voices are all going to change at different times, and they're going to change in really different ways. So I grew up thinking, oh, I remember there was a Brady Bunch episode where the one boy's voice cracked like terribly, you know, like he couldn't even say two words without his voice, you know, just making the craziest noises. And actually, while that kind of extreme crackiness does happen for every so many kids, most people it's much more gradual. Much more gradual and much more subtle, and what you're noticing of limited range is a really common thing. There will also be for a lot of men, there'll be times where they can, for young men, where they can still kind of sing in their soprano range or in their treble range. And all of a sudden, there are some of these new notes that are popping up. And it's an uncomfortable and tricky time because they're both like young and immature. They don't even know what's going on. And unless you're in a school like Elizabeth School, singing isn't really an everyday thing for most young men. And so if they were in a choir or if they're in a, you know, a music class that meets once a week would be much more common, they might go a whole week and not let themselves make vocal sounds until all of a sudden they have to, and then they have no technique to know how to deal with it. And so in the what I think of as kind of an average setting where it's not very regular, they're not taking proper voice lessons, you know, they're just awkward, then the best thing we can do is just help them know that they're good, they're fine, there's nothing wrong with them, they're not doing anything embarrassing, and we're just gonna work with them and try to keep them feeling supported, try to work with them enough to make them feel like a member of the room and that it's okay. Um, if I notice that a young man is frustrated, like maybe he was a singer when, you know, a month ago or a year ago, and he was known as being a singer, and now all of a sudden he can't sing the way he wants to, then I will go out of my way to reassure him things are happening, and maybe I'm pulling that child aside to just tell him what's happening, and and I'm really careful about the way that we're talking about it in front of everybody. If everybody kind of knows what's up, then fine. But if what maybe you just implied is that most of the class is still singing treble, we've got this one weirdo who's singing not treble, I'm going to do everything in my power to normalize it. And maybe that one's a little easier for me because my adult singing range is not treble. And so I can do that. But in any case, we just want to assure him that it's going to get easier. It's going to get easier. It's going to get better. There's nothing wrong. And you really can't rush it. And so I think your idea of just singing down the octave with him is fine. The Don pointed out that a little bit ago that, being the silly person in the room and showing kind of all the range of things and how we're all okay. So sometimes in those settings, I'll sing in my falsetto as well, and then flip into my baritone, and get myself back and forth between the two, just to be like, we all make lots of noises and lots of sounds, and it's all okay. And especially with those changing voices, I've spent a lot of time making, arrangements, where whether, maybe we can be in octaves, but maybe I get all of a sudden have a nice opportunity for two-part harmony in the room, or, we're looking for things. And if I know that he's got a limited range of a fifth, which would not be uncommon, then I'm thinking, well, where does this song go that it needs more than a fifth? And what are we going to have him do so that he doesn't have to be wrong, right? Yeah, that's the quick answer.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Friends, it's already 3 after the hour, and I feel like we're just getting going. We want to know more about Elizabeth's classes, and we want to figure out how to get Dawn's classes and Elizabeth classes to be the same classes, and how are we going to do Plastique Animé with Elizabeth's kids, and there's all sorts of good work here. But I think this has been our hallmark for 4 years. We get some really nice people together. We get some good ideas going, and everybody walks away with something. I know I did tonight, and leave us wanting more. So I hope, thank you to our friends who are here live with us tonight, and for everybody who's watching after the fact, come and join us live the next time you're awake. We have a master class coming up this weekend with Sachiko Morinaka from Japan. And then when does Andrew's class start, Veronica?
It starts November 3rd.
All right. And so the short course with Andrew Davidson, also, these are don't miss. So thank you, everybody. Thank you so much to our presenters, to Dawn and Elizabeth, and thank you to Mari and Kwanting for joining in. And we'll see everybody back at meetup number 78. Will be the next one.
Thank you guys for doing this.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Yeah.